The town was quiet at midnight, covered in deep white snow. The street lamps gave only a weak glow, and the forest behind John's house looked like a wall of black shadows. Inside his small cabin, John was sitting near the fire, half asleep in his chair. Max, his loyal dog, was lying by the door, breathing slow and steady. The night felt calm, too calm, like the world was holding its breath. Then it began. Max growled, low and sharp. John opened his eyes, frowning. "Easy, boy," he whispered. But Max's ears shot up and his body stiffened. The dog jumped to his feet and barked loudly, rushing to the door. John sighed, thinking maybe a fox or rabbit was running through the snow. But Max did not stop. His barking grew louder. Urgent, full of warning. Something was wrong. John could feel it now. John grabbed his coat and flashlight, muttering, "What's out there at this hour?" He opened the door, and cold air cut across his face like knives. The wind whistled. Snow crunched under Max's paws as the dog ran ahead into the dark. John followed quickly, shining the light toward the forest. The beam shook in his hands, but nothing looked unusual. Just trees. Snow and shadows. Still, Max kept barking. Running in circles near the tree line, John's heart began to pound. Then he saw it, strange lights flickering between the trees. Not the soft yellow of fireflies, not the white flash of headlights. These lights pulsed in colors, blue, green, and silver, like stars had fallen to the ground. John froze, his breath catching. "What in the world?" he whispered. Max barked even louder, his fur standing on end. The lights moved slowly, like something alive. Before fading into the darkness, John swallowed hard and took a cautious step forward. He knew he should go back inside, lock the door and forget what he saw, but Max refused to stop, barking and pulling at the edge of the woods. The dog's instincts were strong. He sensed something that did not belong here. John tightened his coat, raised the flashlight, and stepped into the forest. The snow was deep, each step sinking with a soft crunch. The air felt heavy, too still, like the forest itself was listening. He walked deeper, following Max's barks. The flashlight beam cut through the black trees, catching flakes of snow falling silently. Then, a sound. A faint whimper. Soft and weak, John froze, holding his breath. It wasn't an animal sound he recognized. It wasn't a fox, deer, or wolf. It sounded almost human, but not quite. Max dashed ahead, disappearing behind a fallen log. John hurried after him, heart racing. When he reached the clearing, his light landed on something lying in the snow. At first, he thought it was a child, small body, curled up, shivering. But as he stepped closer, his stomach twisted. This was no ordinary child. The figure had skin that glowed faintly, pale silver under the snow. Strange markings like glowing veins ran across its arms. Its clothes, or whatever it was wearing, looked torn, made from a material John had never seen before. The child's eyes opened slowly, wide and shining with light. They were not human eyes. They were large, bright, almost like liquid stars. John's breath caught in his throat. Max stopped barking and sat down, whining softly, as if he understood. The small being whispered something, words John could not understand. The voice was weak but filled with fear. The child reached out a trembling hand toward John. Snowflakes melted on its glowing skin. John hesitated, fear and wonder fighting inside him. What was this? A dream, a trick of the night? But the child looked at him with desperate eyes, not dangerous eyes, but pleading ones. John knelt slowly, pressing his hand against the snow for balance. "Easy. Easy now," he whispered, though he knew the child would not understand. The child coughed, a sound strange and broken. Its small body shook violently in the cold. John felt his chest tighten. This child, this being, was dying here in the snow without thinking. He pulled off his scarf and wrapped it around the child's shoulders. The skin felt warm, too warm, like fire under the fabric. Still the child shivered. Whispering in that unknown language, Max leaned close. Licking the child's hand gently, the child let out a faint sigh, almost a smile crossing its glowing face. Then suddenly the forest echoed with another sound. A deep hum, low and metallic, rolling through the trees. John jerked his head up, searching. The sky flickered with light, a faint glow above the treetops. He felt the ground vibrate slightly under his boots. Something was moving in the sky, searching, hunting. The child's glowing eyes widened with terror. It clutched John's hand tightly, whispering one clear word this time. "Hide." John's blood ran cold. The night was no longer quiet, no longer safe. Something had found them. Something that wanted this child back, Max growled. Standing between John and the forest shadows, John looked down at the alien child shivering in his arms. The weight of choice pressed down on him. Run, hide, or face whatever was coming. The midnight bark had led him to a secret no human was ever meant to find. And now his life would never be the same. John hurried back through the snow, holding the strange child close to his chest. The cold night bit into his skin, but the warmth from the glowing little body burned against his arms. Max barked and ran ahead, looking back again and again as if guiding them home. Behind them, the deep hum in the sky grew softer. But John felt it was not gone. It was circling, searching, waiting. Every crunch of snow under his boots sounded too loud, too dangerous. John's mind raced with questions. But there was no time to think, only to move at last. They reached the small wooden cabin, its chimney still smoking from the dying fire inside. John pushed the door open, nearly stumbling as he carried the child in. He laid the being gently on the old couch, pulling off the heavy scarf and covering it with thick blankets. The alien child's glowing skin dimmed and brightened like it was breathing through light. Max jumped onto the rug beside the couch, lying down but keeping his sharp eyes fixed on the visitor. The dog did not growl now, only wagged his tail nervously and let out soft whines. John knelt beside the couch, unsure of what to do. The child opened its strange, star-like eyes again, blinking slowly. For a moment, they locked on John's face, then shifted to Max. The child raised one weak hand. Fingers trembling, Max leaned forward, sniffing carefully, then pressed his nose against the glowing skin. To John's surprise, the dog licked the small hand, tail wagging faster. The child's lips curved. A faint smile forming, John let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Guess you're not dangerous then," he muttered softly. Though fear still gripped his chest, he studied the being closer under the cabin's lamplight. Its veins shimmered faintly like thin threads of silver. The markings on its skin looked almost like writing, strange symbols that pulsed with faint light. Its clothes were torn, thin pieces of some strange metallic fabric he had never seen before. Who was this child? Where did it come from? And most importantly, what was chasing it through the snow? John stood and paced the room, running his hand through his hair. He thought about calling someone, the sheriff, maybe even the government. But as soon as the thought came, he shook his head. He imagined black cars, men in suits, secret labs, cages, and experiments. No, he couldn't do that, not yet. The child didn't look dangerous, it looked scared, lost, and hurt. And something in John's heart told him this being needed protection, not prison. Suddenly, the lamp flickered, buzzing weakly. Then the heater shut off with a dull click. The whole cabin groaned as if the power itself was being drained. John frowned, staring at the dark screen of the heater. The alien child shivered harder under the blanket, glowing brighter for a moment, then dimming again. John realized with a cold shiver, it was pulling energy from the house. Electricity flowed into it somehow, like it was feeding on power. "Lord help me," John whispered, stepping back. But then he saw the child's chest rise more steadily. Its breath no longer shallow, it was healing slowly. By drawing power outside, the wind howled against the walls. John peeked through the curtain, scanning the snow-covered forest. His heart sank, headlights in the distance. Moving down the old road toward town, a black SUV, its tires crunching against the icy ground. Even at this distance, he could tell. Government, military, or someone worse. He cursed under his breath and let the curtain drop. "They're already here," he whispered. Max let out a low growl, sensing John's unease. The child opened its glowing eyes again, staring at John with a strange intensity. Then it moved its hand weakly, touching his arm. In an instant, John's vision blurred. He gasped as strange images rushed into his mind. Not his own memories, but the child's. He saw giant armored beings with glowing weapons chasing the small alien. He saw fire, explosions, and ships that cut through the sky like blades. And he saw fear, deep fear, as the child ran. Alone, hunted, desperate, John staggered back, gripping the wall. "What the hell was that?" he muttered, his voice shaking. The child coughed, its voice thin but clearer now. 2 words came out, broken but in English. "They come." John froze, his blood turning cold. "They're after you," he whispered, his mind racing. Not just the government, something else was out there too. Something far worse. Max barked sharply at the door, his ears up, body tense. Footsteps crunched outside in the snow, heavy and slow. John's heart slammed against his ribs. He reached for the shotgun hanging above the fireplace. His hands shook as he loaded it, the click of metal echoing in the silence. The child's glowing eyes followed his every move. It looked at him not with fear this time, but with trust, as if it knew this human would stand between it and the danger outside. John swallowed hard, sweat cold on his brow. The doorknob rattled once, twice, then stopped. Silence fell, heavy and tense. John raised the gun, finger tight on the trigger. Max growled low, his fur standing like bristles. The child whispered again, voice weak but sharp with meaning. "Hide me." The lamp flickered once more, the room filling with strange shadows. Outside, the footsteps moved away, crunching slowly back into the snow. But John knew this was not over. Someone or something was searching for the alien child, and they would not stop until they found it. He looked down at the small being lying weakly on his couch. He thought of the images burned into his mind, of hunters and fire and death. And he understood one terrible truth. This child was not just strange, it was a target. And now, by saving it, John himself had become part of the hunt. The night stretched long and restless inside John's cabin. He sat by the fire with the shotgun across his lap, every nerve in his body alive with tension. Max dozed lightly near the couch, one ear always raised, ready to bark. The strange child slept under thick blankets, its faint glow painting soft shadows on the wooden walls. Outside, the wind screamed against the windows, rattling the old glass like ghostly hands. But it was not the storm that worried John. It was the silence between the gusts, the silence that felt like someone or something was waiting in the dark. When dawn finally came, pale and gray, John dared to hope the night had been just fear and imagination. But hope was thin, fragile, and it broke quickly. The lights in the cabin flickered again. The heater buzzed and died. John cursed under his breath, slamming his fist against the switch. Then he noticed something strange outside the window. In the fresh snow just beyond the porch were prints, large, deep, and heavy. Too large for any human, too wide for any wolf. They circled the cabin once, then disappeared back into the woods. John's throat tightened. "They were here," he whispered. His voice a thin breath of dread. Max barked suddenly, sharp and fierce, racing to the door. John grabbed the shotgun and followed, his boots crunching against the wooden floor. He flung the door open, eyes scanning the tree line. But the forest stood silent, only the snow blowing gently across the ground still. The feeling of being watched pressed down on him like a heavy hand. He stepped out onto the porch, raised his shotgun and shouted, "Who's out there?" The only answer was the whistle of the wind, but deep in the woods for just a moment, he thought he saw movement, a tall, dark figure slipping between the trees. Too smooth, too fast. John's stomach knotted. He backed inside quickly, locking the door. Max stood stiff, hackles raised, growling low. The child had woken, its glowing eyes wide with fear. It spoke again, the same broken English. "They find us." John's hand shook as he reloaded the gun. "Yeah," he muttered. "I figured that out." Later that morning, John left the cabin only to chop firewood. He needed warmth, and the simple rhythm of the axe against wood kept his nerves steady. But as he split another log, the distant sound of engines rolled across the valley. He froze, axe still raised. Black SUVs moved along the frozen road, their tires grinding over ice. Men in dark coats stepped out, scanning the woods with sharp eyes and strange equipment. Government, John thought bitterly. Not here to help, not here to protect, here to take, to control, to erase. He ducked behind the woodpile, watching them through narrow gaps. One of the men raised a scanner, the device flashing red. The man turned to the others and nodded. They were tracking something, tracking the child. John's chest tightened. They knew they were coming. He slipped back into the cabin quietly. "We've got trouble," he muttered. The child sat up weakly, clutching the blanket. Its glowing eyes flickered brighter, as if it understood. Then suddenly the lamp on the table sparked. Popping with blue light, the child gasped, veins glowing brighter. The air inside the cabin seemed to buzz with energy. Max whined and backed up, his fur rising. John reached out, steadying the lamp before it fell. The child was draining power again, stronger this time, and with it came a sense of dread. If the men outside had machines to track energy, they would already be moving closer. John peeked through the curtain. The SUVs had stopped, and the men were spreading into the woods, guns slung on their shoulders, radios buzzing. One man pointed directly toward the cabin. John swore under his breath. He had minutes, maybe less. Max barked sharply, racing to the window. The child clutched John's arm with surprising strength. Its glowing eyes locked on him, desperate. John's head spun. What was he supposed to do? Hide the child? Run, fight? Before he could decide, the child whispered again, its voice trembling. Not human. John froze, his mind stumbling. Not human? He looked back out the window and his blood turned cold. The men in dark coats were closer now, stepping between the trees, but their movements were strange. Too smooth, too mechanical. One of them raised his face to the light, and John saw it clearly. Skin stretched too tight, eyes glowing faint beneath the lids. Not men. Machines in disguise, hunters wearing human shapes. Max barked wildly, teeth bared. The child pressed closer to John, shaking. They hunt me, it whispered, voice breaking. They kill. The first figure stepped onto the snow near the cabin. It moved with cold precision. Every step heavy but silent, its hand reached up. Pressing something at its ear, a low hum filled the air. Vibrating the glass in the window, John raised his shotgun, his hands trembling. "Stay back," he muttered. Though he knew they wouldn't listen, the figure's head tilted. Almost curious, then its voice came, flat and mechanical. "Target located." John's heart slammed in his chest. The hunters had found them. This was no longer a mystery. No longer a question. This was war, and it had come to his doorstep. He stepped back, gripping the shotgun tight. The child's glowing eyes never left his. Max stood ready, growling low, teeth sharp. The first threat had arrived, and John knew this was only the beginning. The first hunter stood outside the cabin like a shadow carved from iron. Snow swirled around its tall frame, but the creature did not shiver, did not even breathe. Its glowing eyes scanned the wooden walls as if it could already see through them. Inside, John's grip on the shotgun tightened until his knuckles turned white. Max growled, every muscle in his body tense, his eyes never leaving the door. The alien child clutched the blanket close, whispering in its broken English, "Run!" They come more, and it was true. From the forest came heavy footsteps, one after another. Dark figures moved between the trees, tall and smooth, their armor gleaming faintly beneath the snow. There were not one, but three, then four. Then more hunters, circling, closing in like wolves around prey. John's mind raced. He could stay and fight. But the cabin was nothing but old wood. It would burn. Break or shatter in minutes. The hunters had weapons he could not even imagine. But running blind into the snow felt like suicide too. Still, the child was looking at him with desperate eyes. And Max's growl grew louder, urging him to choose. John swallowed hard and made his decision. He moved quickly, throwing open the back door. "Come on," he hissed. Pulling the child into his arms, Max darted ahead, his paws leaving sharp trails in the snow. The cold slammed into them, the wind sharp against their faces. John hurried toward the forest, his breath burning in his throat. Behind them, the cabin door burst open with a crash. The first hunter stepped inside, searching the empty room. A hollow voice spoke through the snow-filled air. "Target moving." "Pursue." John ran faster, boots crunching, lungs burning. Max barked wildly, guiding the way through the thick trees. But the hunters were not far behind. Their heavy steps crushed the snow, and the glow of their armor flickered between the branches. One raised its arm, a strange weapon forming out of light. The beam shot through the night, striking a tree. The trunk exploded into splinters. Snow raining down, John stumbled but kept running, clutching the child tighter. The child's voice trembled in his arms. "They track my energy." "What?" John gasped, his chest aching. "They feel me, like fire and snow," the child whispered weakly. John cursed under his breath. They couldn't keep running forever, not while the hunters could follow every step. He had to think, had to act. Max barked again. But this time his bark was sharp, commanding. The dog dashed left, disappearing into the shadows of the trees. For a terrifying moment, John thought Max was abandoning them. But then he understood. Max was trying to draw one hunter away. Sure enough, the glow of one set of eyes turned, following the sound of the dog. John's heart ached with both pride and fear. "Good boy," he whispered. Though the words tasted bitter, they reached a frozen creek. Its surface cracked with black water showing beneath. John stopped, chest heaving. He placed the child down gently, kneeling in the snow. The child's glow pulsed faint. Weaker now, it coughed, its voice thin. "Cannot live long, need crystal." "My life," John frowned, confused. "What crystal?" The child raised a trembling hand, pointing toward the hunters chasing them. Their weapons glowed faintly with the same light that ran through the child's veins. Their weapons? Hold it, the child whispered. My life inside. John felt his stomach twist. The hunters weren't just soldiers. They were carrying the very thing the child needed to survive. It meant one thing. If John wanted to save the child, he would have to take it from them, and that meant fighting. The sound of branches cracking snapped him back to the present. The hunters were close again, their tall shapes moving through the trees. John grabbed the shotgun, checking the shells. It felt like nothing compared to their glowing weapons, but it was all he had. Max's bark echoed in the distance, followed by the sound of something heavy crashing into the snow. John flinched, praying his dog was still alive. The first hunter stepped into the clearing, its glowing eyes locking onto John. It raised its arm, weapon ready. John pulled the trigger, the shotgun blast ripping through the cold air. The hunter staggered, sparks flying from its chest, but it did not fall. It only tilted its head as if studying him. Then it raised the weapon higher, light glowing brighter at the tip. John grabbed the child and dove behind a snow-covered log. The beam tore through the clearing, burning a black hole in the ground where he had stood. The heat seared his face, his ears ringing. He clutched the child tightly, heart pounding. I can't fight them like this, he muttered. But the child's glowing eyes met his, fierce despite their weakness. You must, it whispered. You fight. Or both die. The words hit him harder than the cold. John had always been a man who lived quietly, working, hunting, surviving, but now, a strange child from the stars was telling him that only his courage stood between life and death. The hunters stepped closer, their glowing weapons ready. Max's bark echoed again, this time nearer, defiant. The child shivered in his arms. Its glow fading fast, John's jaw tightened. If survival meant fighting, then fight he would. He rose from behind the log. Shotgun steady in his hands, snow swirled around him. The hunters raising their weapons for a heartbeat. The world was silent, man, child, dog, and hunters locked in one frozen moment. Then John shouted, his voice raw and fierce. You want him? You'll have to go through me. And the battle in the snow began. The forest roared with the sound of alien weapons. Blue beams sliced through the trees, shattering bark and burning holes into the frozen ground. Snow exploded upward and the air stank of smoke and ash. John dove behind another fallen log, clutching the shotgun with one hand and shielding the alien child with the other. Max darted through the clearing, barking fiercely, his body a blur against the white snow. The hunters fired at him, but the dog was quick, leaping from one snowbank to another. Drawing their attention, John's heart pounded like a drum. His shotgun was nearly useless. One shot slowed them, but it never stopped them. These were not men, not animals, but machines wearing alien armor, and they were relentless. Still, John refused to surrender. He looked at the glowing weapons in their hands, remembering the child's trembling words. My life inside. If he wanted to save the child, he had to steal one of those weapons. The thought chilled him, but it was the only chance. John pulled the child close, whispering, Stay down. Don't move. The child's glowing eyes met his. Filled with trust and fear, John's chest tightened. This wasn't just survival anymore, it was responsibility. He couldn't fail, not now, Max barked again, leaping at the leg of one hunter. Biting down hard, the alien staggered slightly, turning its glowing weapon toward the dog. Max, no! John shouted. Adrenaline surged through him. He jumped from behind the log. Charging forward with the shotgun raised, he fired once. Boom! The shot slammed into the hunter's chest. Sending sparks flying, the creature stumbled back. Its weapon flickering, John didn't wait. He swung the shotgun like a club, smashing it across the alien's head. The machine collapsed into the snow with a heavy crash. Its weapon dropping from its hand, John dove for it, fingers closing around the strange metal handle. The weapon pulsed with blue light, humming like a living thing. For a moment it burned against his skin, almost rejecting him. But then the hum steadied, and the weapon's glow shifted. John raised it, breathing hard. Let's see what you can do, he muttered. The other hunters turned toward him, their glowing eyes locking on the weapon in his hands. One tilted its head and spoke in that cold, flat voice. Human interference. Eliminate. They raised their weapons, light building at the tips. John aimed and squeezed the trigger instinctively. A beam of blue fire shot from the weapon, cutting through the air and striking one hunter square in the chest. The alien staggered, sparks bursting from its armor. then collapsed into the snow. Unmoving, John's eyes widened. The weapon worked. For the first time since the nightmare began, he felt a spark of hope, but the victory was short. The ground trembled as a low rumble echoed above the forest. John looked up and his stomach dropped. A massive alien ship hovered in the sky, its shadow falling across the trees. Engines thrummed, shaking the ground. More hunters were coming. They had already called for backup. The child crawled from behind the log, its small body weak but its glowing eyes fierce. It reached for John's arm, whispering, "More come. Bigger, stronger. If ship lands, no escape." John swallowed hard, gripping the weapon tighter, so this was it. No more hiding, no more running. If the ship landed, they would all be taken or killed. He had to act before it was too late. Max returned to his side, panting, snow clinging to his fur. His loyal eyes burned with the same determination as John's. The man knelt beside the child, brushing the snow from its face. "Listen," he said softly, though his voice shook. "I'm just a man, just a hunter in the woods. But if you trust me, I'll fight for you." The child blinked slowly, then whispered, "I trust." John stood. Raising the alien weapon, the hunters moved closer, their glowing eyes cutting through the snowstorm. John felt fear claw at his chest, but he forced it down. This was no longer just about surviving the night. This was about proving something, that even a simple human could stand against the darkness. The alien ship's engines roared louder, the trees bending under its force. Snow whipped through the air like white fire. John braced himself. "Come on then," he growled. "Let's see if humanity is as weak as you think." He fired again, the beam tearing through the snow and striking another hunter. It fell with a crash, sparks flying. Max leapt at a second, biting down on its arm as John fired once more. The clearing filled with smoke, light, and the sound of battle. The child huddled behind the log, whispering weak words in its strange tongue. Its glow flickered, weaker and weaker. Time was running out. John knew he had to end this fast, but then a shadow larger than any before fell across the snow. The alien ship lowered closer. Its engines screaming, the hunters spread out, forming a wall around the clearing. John's stomach twisted. There were too many now, far too many, but he held the weapon firm, Max by his side, the child's glowing eyes watching him. He had no choice but to fight, no choice but to stand. As the ship's doors began to open, spilling light across the frozen ground, John raised the alien weapon high. The snowstorm swirled around him. Max barked fiercely, and the child whispered one last word: "Courage." And John prepared to make his last stand. The alien ship hovered above the forest like a dark mountain of steel. Its engines screamed, shaking the ground and tearing branches from the trees. Snow whipped in every direction, spinning through the air like white fire. John stood in the middle of the clearing, gripping the stolen alien weapon with both hands. Max crouched at his side, teeth bared, his growl steady and low. Behind them, the alien child leaned weakly against a log, its glowing eyes filled with both fear and trust. The hunters formed a wide circle, their armor flashing with cold light. They raised their glowing weapons as one, aiming at John. For a moment, the world fell silent except for the roar of the ship. John's heart pounded like a drum in his chest. He was just one man, armed with a weapon he barely understood. But something burned inside him, something stronger than fear. He whispered under his breath, "Not today." The first hunter stepped forward, its glowing eyes fixed on the child. John raised the alien gun and fired. The beam of blue light shot through the storm, striking the creature's chest. It staggered back, sparks bursting from its armor, then collapsed into the snow. The others moved at once, firing beams that tore through the clearing. Trees exploded. Snow hissed into steam. The ground shook under the blasts. John dove behind the log, pulling the child close. Max leapt beside him, barking wildly. The blast struck where John had been standing seconds before. The log split, fire crackling across its frozen surface. John gasped for breath, his lungs burning. He peeked out, saw 3 hunters advancing. He squeezed the trigger again. One fell, its armor shattering, but the weapon buzzed strangely. The light inside dimming, it was running out of power. "No, not now," John muttered. Shaking it, the child tugged his sleeve, whispering weakly, "Crystal. Inside, recharge." John's eyes widened. If he could break open a hunter's weapon, he could take the crystal inside. He nodded sharply. "All right then," he growled. "We do this the hard way." Max barked sharply and dashed forward. Leaping at the nearest hunter, his teeth sank into the alien's arm, making it stumble. John seized the chance. Charging forward with the alien gun like a club, he smashed it across the hunter's head. Knocking its weapon free, the alien staggered. Sparks spitting from its armor, John kicked hard, sending it crashing into the snow. He grabbed its weapon, pulling hard until the casing cracked. Inside glowed a small crystal. Pulsing with faint light, John tore it free, his fingers burning from its heat. The child cried out softly from behind the log. "My life. Give. Now." John sprinted back, sliding to his knees beside the child. He pressed the glowing crystal against its chest. The veins on the child's body flared with light, silver rushing through them like liquid fire. Its breathing steadied, its small frame glowing brighter. The child gasped once, then opened its shining eyes. Stronger now. Clearer, it whispered. "Thank you." But there was no time for relief. The ground shook as the alien ship lowered even closer. From its open bay stepped a giant figure, larger than any hunter John had seen. Its armor gleamed like black steel. Its eyes burned with crimson light. In its hands was a weapon twice the size of the others. Humming with deadly power, the hunters stepped back. Bowing their heads as if in respect, this was their leader, the true enemy. John's blood ran cold. Max growled louder than ever, standing in front of the child, refusing to move. The leader raised its massive weapon, its voice deep and mechanical. "Human, surrender the target. You are weak. You cannot resist." John stood slowly, gripping the alien gun tighter. His body ached, his muscles burned, but his voice came out steady. "You think I'm weak? You came all this way just to chase one child, and you think I'll hand him over?" He spat into the snow. "Not a chance." The leader tilted its head, almost curious, then it stepped forward. Raising the weapon, John fired first, the beam striking its chest. The shot exploded against the armor but did not break it. The leader didn't even flinch. It raised its weapon. A beam of red fire roaring through the clearing. John dove aside, the blast tearing a crater where he had stood. Heat seared his face, snow melted into steam around him. Max leapt at the leader, his teeth flashing. The giant swatted him aside with one arm, sending the dog crashing into the snow. "Max!" John shouted, his chest aching with rage. The child stood now, its glow brighter, stronger. It raised its trembling hands, light gathering between its palms. The leader turned sharply, firing again. John dove in front of the child, the blast slamming into the ground. Throwing him backward, pain tore through his body, but he forced himself up, coughing blood into the snow. The alien gun flickered weakly in his hands. Almost dead, but his eyes burned with fire, he stepped forward, planting himself between the leader and the child. "If this is the end," he growled, "then I'll make damn sure you remember the man who stood against you." The leader charged. Weapon glowing bright, John raised the alien gun one last time. Max staggered back to his feet, limping but ready. The child's glow flared like a star, its voice ringing through the storm. "Human. Not weak, human strong," the storm screamed. The ship thundered above, and the last stand began. The clearing burned with light and fire. The alien ship hovered low, its engines shaking the ground, snow whipping through the air like knives. John stood bleeding, the alien weapon weak in his hands. Max limped beside him, growling even as his body shook. And the alien child glowed brighter now, its small form trembling but alive. Across from them, the alien leader towered, its crimson eyes burning, its weapon humming with deadly power. The circle of hunters stood back, silent, waiting. This was no longer their fight. It was a duel, a test. Human against alien. Flesh against steel. Courage against power. The leader stepped forward, its heavy feet cracking the frozen ground. "You are nothing," it said, its voice deep and cold. "You are weak, human. Surrender and I will end your pain quickly." John spat blood into the snow. "Maybe I am weak," he rasped, "but I'll never surrender." The leader raised its massive weapon. John squeezed the trigger of his stolen gun. Blue light shot out, striking the leader's chest. Sparks bursting, but the armor held, only blackened at the edges. The alien laughed, a low mechanical rumble. "Your weapons are toys. Your fight is meaningless." John dropped to one knee, his body screaming with pain. The gun hummed faintly. Almost dead, Max barked wildly, throwing himself at the leader once more. His teeth sank into its arm, shaking with fury. The leader swatted him away like a fly. Max crashed into the snow, whimpering. John's heart cracked at the sound. But Max pulled himself up again, weak but unbroken. The dog stood in front of the child. Refusing to move, the leader aimed its weapon at Max. John's eyes widened in horror. "No!" he shouted. With the last of his strength, he hurled himself at the alien. The blast fired wide, tearing through the trees. John slammed into the leader's chest, the impact rattling his bones. He struck again and again with the butt of the alien gun. Sparks flew, armor dented, but the giant didn't fall. Instead, the leader grabbed him by the throat. Lifting him into the air, John's vision blurred. His breath crushed out of him. "You are brave," the alien said, its cold voice echoing. "But bravery cannot change fate." John's arms trembled, his body failing. The gun slipped from his hand, falling into the snow. His lungs screamed for air. He looked down at the child, standing small but glowing like a star. He thought of Max fighting even when broken, and he thought of humanity, fragile, small yet unyielding with the last of his strength. He rasped, "Maybe not fate, but choice." The child stepped forward, its glow flaring brighter than ever before. Its hands lifted, silver light bursting from its body. The leader turned, but too late. The child's voice rang clear. Not weak now, but strong. Human, not weak. Human strong, the light struck the leader. Slamming into its chest, the alien roared, its armor cracking, sparks exploding from every joint. It dropped John into the snow, staggering back. The child poured every ounce of its life energy into the blast. Snow melted, trees split. The hunters stumbled back in shock. The leader fell to its knees, its red eyes flickering. For the first time, it looked uncertain. For the first time, it feared. John coughed, dragging himself to his knees. He seized the fallen alien weapon, its glow weak but alive. With a roar, he drove it forward, striking the leader's chest where the armor had cracked. The beam fired, bursting through steel and circuits. The leader let out one final roar, then collapsed into the snow with a crash that shook the earth. Its crimson eyes went dark, its weapon silent. The hunters froze, their circle broken. Then, one by one, they lowered their weapons. Their flat voices echoed together. "Leader!" Defeated, they turned, their armor flickering, and marched back into the trees. The ship above rumbled, engines shifting. Slowly, it lifted higher, its shadow fading into the stormy sky. The hunters retreated with it, leaving the clearing scarred and broken but alive. John dropped to the ground. Gasping for breath, Max limped to his side, pressing against him with a weak bark. John reached down, stroking the dog's head. "You did good, boy," he whispered. Voice cracked with exhaustion. The child knelt beside him. Glowing faint but steady, it touched his hand. Its voice soft now. "You save me. You save all." John looked into its strange, star-filled eyes. He shook his head. "No, we saved each other." The forest fell quiet. The storm easing, snow drifted softly from the sky, covering the blackened ground. The alien ship was gone, the hunters defeated. But John knew this was not the end. He had seen too much, learned too much. The galaxy was larger, darker, and more dangerous than he had ever imagined. And now humanity had been noticed. The child stood slowly, its glow dimming. It looked up at the sky, then back at John. "Galaxies will remember this, humans, remembered as brave." John gave a weak laugh, coughing. "Brave, huh? I'm just a man with a dog." But deep down, he knew the child was right tonight in a frozen forest. Humanity had made its first choice. Not to surrender, not to run, but to fight. And that choice would echo far beyond Earth. As the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, John sat in the snow, Max leaning against him, the alien child standing by his side. The world felt changed, forever changed. John whispered into the cold air, "We are not alone anymore."